Well, good afternoon, good evening. It is Saturday, September 4th, the first Saturday of September 2021. And this is our lectionary devotional based on the Revised Common Lectionary. Today we are in the Gospel of Mark. We're looking at the Gospel readings this time around. We find ourselves in Mark's Gospel, chapter 7. Verses 24 through 37, and interestingly, two miracles are going to occur in this section. So we're going to take a look at that. We are currently in the season of, still in the season of Pentecost. It is the 15th Sunday after Pentecost, also the proper 18, if you count that way. Is what we're looking at, and again we're going to take a look at Mark. Number one, the faith of a Gentile woman. Remember that really at this point the Gentiles weren't in the God plan yet. That changes after the crucifixion, but we're going to see how this Jesus responds to this Gentile woman, and then secondly, there's another healing that takes place. So Mark 7:24. Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre. He didn't want anyone to know which house he was staying in, but he couldn't keep it a secret. We see this in John's gospel. We find this in other gospel. The people coming to find Jesus wherever he was. He wanted to keep it a secret, but it wasn't possible. Right away, a woman who had heard about him came and fell at his feet. Her little girl was possessed by an evil spirit, and she begged him to cast out the demon from her daughter. Now, she is a Gentile woman. So to the Jewish people, Gentiles are not God's chosen people. Since she was a Gentile, born in Syrian Phoenicia, Jesus told her, "First I should feed the children, my own family, the Jews. It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." She's persistent because she replied, "It's true, Lord. But even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat scraps from the children's plates." Ooh. "Good answer," he said. "Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter." And when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone. That's the first story, that this faith of the Gentile woman. She wasn't willing to take Jesus' first answer of no for an answer, and she persisted, and she reminded Jesus that it was kind of funny. Today we were at the farmer's market, and at the farmer's market we cook scrapple sandwiches, and for those of you who are not from the Delaware or Southeast Pennsylvania area, people like to describe scrapple as everything but the oink. It's scraps of pig, but it's formed into a loaf, boiled and formed into a loaf and dried, and it's actually when you fry it on the grill, it's very tasty. But today we're cooking hot dogs as well, and two of the hot dogs fell on the ground. I'm like, what are we going to do with these? And so I thought about, hey, there's several of the other vendors here at the farmers market have dogs. So you know what? Let me go take and offer them some free hot dogs. And so going back to this idea that even dogs eat from the scrap from the children's table, the Gentile, she's like, surely there's enough in you. I'm thinking like, you think of the woman who was healed by just touching the garment of the robe. And so many times we see this faith of these people who come into the Jesus story, and they have this great faith, and Jesus does pretty amazing things for them. So yeah. And so she says, yeah, but what about the dogs who get the scraps? And he goes, okay, good answer. So let me heal your daughter. And so she goes home and finds out that her daughter's healed. So that brings us to the second one. Jesus, in verse 31, Jesus left Tyre and went up to Sidon before going back to the Sea of Galilee into the region of the 10 towns. A deaf man with a speech impediment was brought to him. The people begged Jesus to lay his hands on the man to heal him. Jesus led him away. I think this is interesting because Jesus leads him away from the crowd so that they could be alone. So we see that Jesus heals in a crowd, but then we also see in this case, in both cases, this woman previous was at a house that where he's staying. Jesus takes him away so he can be alone, putting his fingers into the man's ears, then spitting on his own fingers, he touched the man's tongue, and looking up to heaven, he sighed and said, Ephathatha, which means be open. And instantly the man could hear perfectly, and his tongue was freed, so he could speak plainly. So not only was he, they were led to him because he was deaf, but he was also mute. He couldn't speak. And so all of a sudden, he could hear everything, he could say things, and a great miracle. And again, Jesus told the crowd not to tell anyone, but the more he told them not to, the more they spread the news. And we know how that goes. When we tell people, hey, this is a secret, it will usually get out. They were completely amazed. And I think this is a word that is used several times in the Gospel of Mark. They were amazed. Early on in Mark, they talk about being amazed at his authority. And so the people were amazed, and they said again and again, everything he does is wonderful. He even makes the deaf to hear and gives speech to those who cannot speak. It's I really find this interesting, this idea that people are amazed at Jesus because he's not like the Pharisees, he's not like the religious. And I was thinking, even as that applies to us today, so many of us try to go around looking really religious, and Jesus wasn't really trying to look religious, not like the Pharisees at least. And there's churches that go around trying to look really religious, so this past week we gave food, we served food to the teachers, and people were really just amazed that we would do something. It was funny, one lady, she says, we gave out some door prizes for the crew, and there was one lady who said, one of the ladies said, hey, wait a second, you forgot your door prize, because we had random numbered trays, and the lady goes, I never win anything. This is so cool. And so it's just, and a lot of people just said, wow, this is just amazing. Nobody's ever done anything like this for us before. And so I'd encourage you. Jesus never sought fame or fortune. And, when we gave out lunch, we weren't expecting fame or fortune. And I think God calls us to be in it all the time. He calls us to be in the game all the time and to meet people where they are. And that's what Jesus did. He even met people where they are who he didn't initially plan on healing. And but they were completely, everything he does is wonderful. And wouldn't that be a cool thing for people, for us to hear, not for our own glory, but for the glory of God. Jesus did these healings for the glory of God. And that's, as we do our works, we have to do them as we are spiritual people. We need to do that for the glory of God. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.